Hello and welcome to RevDive. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we use this space to kind of hear from and share with healthcare leaders inside and outside of the revenue cycle. I am so excited about our guest today, who is Kevin Dedner. He is the founder and CEO of Hurdle Health. Kevin is also the author of The Joy of the Disinherited, Essays on Trauma, Oppression, and Black Mental Health. Kevin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Kim. It's great to be here.
Kevin, you are an amazing visionary and a leader. And I'm so glad that you're able to share your expertise with our Rev divers today. And with so many challenges that individuals are facing, just kind of taking a step forward to address mental health, it really ensures that we have a healthier population. And finding and collaborating with mental health service providers, it really kind of paves the way for addressing gaps in care. Can you tell us about the unique approach that Hurdle has taken to virtual therapy services?
Yeah, well, first of all, Kim, let me just pause and thank you for saying such uh, kind things about me. And I also just want to acknowledge the role that you played in the birth of our company. Our company is 3 years old, and you were one of the very first persons I sat down with to really help me understand how I could go about getting a network and working with payers. I came to the work incredibly naive, but very well aware that the people who we wanted to serve, there were a lot of barriers that we needed to overcome. And the ability to pay, the ability for insurance to be accepted, I saw as like a critical point for us. And that hypothesis um, has proved true. So I just want to thank you for the work that you did in helping point us in the right direction. You'll be excited to know that we've actually just closed our first national contract um, last week, and and we should close two more within the next couple of weeks. So super excited about the foundation that you and proud of the foundation that you helped us lay. Um, yeah, so I'm grateful.
Thank
Um, I'm sorry.
I just said thank you. It's my
Yeah.
pleasure to be a part of that.
Yeah, so at Hurdle, we face a hard truth, and that hard truth is that the mental health care system was not designed for everyone. That we have a system that was really designed for one segment of our population, that for far too long, mental health has been a luxury and a privilege. And so at Hurdle, what we do, really differently. Number one, we've always been 100% virtual, even before the pandemic. Um, is we train our therapists in an evidence-based technique that helps them develop more cultural humility and cultural responsiveness. In the states that we operate in, we try to be in network with the major payers there, but but we also accept members, who are willing to pay out of pocket. So, really, what our model is about cultural humility and cultural responsiveness. We're seeing our clients persist 2 to 3 times the national historical average, which is incredibly important because although we know minorities are have been more likely to experience mental health problems, they've been less likely to access care. And of those who did move forward in care, we've seen at least 50% of those persons terminate therapy prematurely because of the lack of provider fit, because of the lack of therapeutic alliance between the client and the provider. So in this way, we're super proud of, the early results that we're seeing in our company, and really excited about growing a national company that, meets the needs of everyone's mental health.
Yeah, and that's so important right now with making sure that we're touching the people who actually need these services. Now, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about authorship. And I remember when I was pumping gas and you and I were kind of sharing our thoughts about authorship, and it's a huge milestone for both of us, particularly your book. And I want to hear from you, and I know that our audience would love to hear some insight on the message that your book has for the world.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging my book. You wrote a book, so you know what incredible discipline it takes, and what a sacrifice it is. My book was, or is, I should say, a continuation of my work in mental health. It, I think, it further cements the purpose of our company. It helps me articulate with a more precision why I started the company, and really, more importantly, how oppression and trauma, and I should even go so far to say continued oppression, impacts the mental health of people of color in this country. And so my book is, written through my own personal lens as a Black man from, the American South, and sometimes I even call it the antebellum South. And I tell stories about me and my family and how, we've experienced life and how that impacts our mental health. And I think this, as I said, further cements like why we need companies like Hurdle, why we need to acknowledge the fallacies in the mental health system, and in that way, it's a vulnerable offering for people who want to understand more, and certainly in this moment that we're in, where people are trying to understand the Black experience better, like on the heels of the pandemic, on the heels of the social and civil unrest we saw following the murder of George Floyd. Yeah, I think it's super important that we assign narrative to these stories.
Yeah. And that's powerful. And what we're seeing across the nation is mental health services just they're really being prioritized more so now, as before the pandemic. We're even seeing CMS increasing reimbursement for telehealth, for behavioral health services. We're seeing floods of therapists coming into the workplace, which is fantastic. Um, what's also interesting is CMS recently, well, last year, they they definitely saw the telehealth originating site waivers as a priority in mental health services. More so, what's fascinating is the office visits haven't been approved yet permanently for telehealth visits, but mental health services have. That shows, um, I think, to anyone who is really looking at the priority of mental health services, that really kind of shows that mental health services are being prioritized. How do you see this prioritization of mental health services impacting the future of the mental health landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, I think you know all too well, just a few short years ago, what a challenge it was to get reimbursed for virtual visits. We had major payers saying to us that they didn't do virtual therapy, and I think one of the pandemic has obviously been devastating in so many ways. But one of the gifts of the pandemic, I think, is that the advancement of technology and the advancement of our thinking in how to serve people. And so in this way, we've seen, things like originating sites be waived. And I think that teletherapy and telehealth rather are really here to stay. And I think that when we start to think about like our shortage, our work supply shortage, we start to think about geographical shortages, that there are real solutions in telehealth, and particularly in the mental health field. We know that we have a shortage of professional therapists. We know that we also can have a shortage of minority therapists. Less than 4% of the therapists in the country are people of color. And what we've seen the last 2 years rather, is what we call the largest increase in treatment seeking behavior among minorities. And so, if we want to be able to serve the needs of people, telehealth, teletherapy are going to be an important part of that. And, I anticipate that we'll see a lot more policy and regulation change. I'm also super anxious to see, what states will do around reciprocity of licensing, how payers will begin, to work together across state lines, like some of the payers, I think, can work together much better to make it easier to process claims. And so I think we have a lot of work to do, but the truth is we've made some really significant advancements just within the last 16 to 18 months.
Yeah, totally agree. So one thing that I have been able to see firsthand is your leadership, and I definitely view you as a visionary leader. The way that I've seen you move through problems and identify solutions, build teams, um, it was very remarkable to witness and to be a part of. But I also see how important that is to healthcare leaders, to revenue cycle leaders, folks who are dealing with frontline workers, who are, trying to make sure that patients are safe, through COVID-19. Um, you have been able to push through a lot of obstacles, and you've also been able to lead teams successfully. What advice would you give to leaders who are trying to right now kind of keep their eye on the prize during adversity?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind things you said. And I want to answer your question in two ways. First of all, I think, the thing that motivates me so much, Kim, is um, my own suffering, my own depression.
Mm.
And I heard a quote once. Now, paraphrase the quote a bit. It said that once you become aware of your own suffering and you're able to do something about it, then you realize that so many others around you are suffering. And so, after my depression and after overcoming my depression, I think, you know, um, God gifted me with this lens of seeing mental health issues, of seeing it in everyday people who, at face value, appear to have it all together. But, because of this lens that I have, I know, I know that to be different. And so, that is the thing that motivates me, because I do think that, we've just not created the infrastructure in our culture to support people's mental health. And so part of my motivation is to be on the side of, really normalizing mental health and normalizing people accessing mental health and taking better care of their minds, their bodies, but not only their minds. And so, what I would say to leaders in this regard is, at our company, I'm always very clear with people that there will always be this tension of between work life balance. In fact, I don't even like the term balance anymore. I'm leaning more toward integration. And so what I encourage people to do is to, all particularly leaders, to number one, acknowledge the tension that you're asking people to do things that take them away from their family, that take them away from sometimes the things that they enjoy doing, right? And you always need more of them as a leader, but you should give them the grace to make sure that they take good care of themselves. And I think if you just acknowledge this tension, you'll be surprised what people will be willing to do. People won't take advantage of the offering to take the grace that they need or the space that they need. In fact, I think it frees them up to work a little bit more liberally for you because they can figure out like, oh, I do need to take the rest that I need. We've been on a tremendous stressful period. All of us are, suffering from, you know, um, anxiety, um, unpredictability. Our lives have been so unpredictable the last couple of years, and I think anyone, any leader who doesn't acknowledge that, are doing themselves a disservice.
Wow, great advice. Acknowledge it. Wow. Work life integration. Oh my gosh. These are great, great thoughts. Kevin, thank you so much for being with us today. And it's also really good to see you also. You're thriving. I'm so happy for you, and I'm so happy for the team that you've built and the great work that you and your team are doing at Hurdle. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Kim. I'm grateful for you as well.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rev Divers, for joining us today. Until we meet again, Rev Divers, keep diving into those Rev cycles.